Welcome back to we're quite good at football, aren't we? Saturday was one of those days where you just find yourself running out of superlatives for the team that we're building at Arsenal, and the records were flowing like Martinelli on the transition. Arsenal are the first team in Premier League history to score 2 or more goals in 7 consecutive halves of Premier League football. Bukayo Saka has 8 goals in his last 7 Premier League appearances, becoming the first player to score in 5 successive league appearances for Arsenal since Giroud. Declan Rice got his 4th corner assist in 2024, as Arsenal took their goals from corners tally to 13 for the season, comfortably the highest in the league. Arsenal have scored half as many Premier League goals in February as United's entire season total. And we are mathematically safe from relegation. Safety first, kids. After 6 Premier League wins in a row, scoring 25 goals in the process and putting ourselves right in the title conversation, it's time to answer the question, how are we doing it? Well, there's the basics that the eye can see, of course. Bukayo Saka is at the best level he's ever been. Declan Rice could probably anticipate and counterpress his own death. And Gabriel and Saliba, I feel comfortable saying, have, for me, reached the highest peak of any centre-back pairing in the Emirates era for Arsenal, surpassing Per and Koscielny for me as the greatest we've ever had. Right now, I can give a special mention to basically anyone. Jorginho, Kivior, Raya, White, even Kai Havertz. We're maturing as a team, we've hit form at an incredible time, and as Mikel says, if we want to be the best team in the world, we have to have the best stadium and atmosphere. So the crowd have played their part too. I've never seen Arsenal make as much of an effort to improve the atmosphere for a single game, with tifos, flags, interviews, social media posts, and even hiring Gets to get us fired. I shouldn't have written that. So all that and more plays a part, but this is the different knock. Performances like that don't happen without elite football ideas and coaching as the absolute fundamental. So let's look a little bit deeper at 3 of the things that are going so right now. Jesse Marsh recently appeared on Sky Sports for the M&F Managerial Showcase for Potential Employers. A guest appearance, and was actually genuinely really insightful about the Red Bull model. One of the principles he was discussing was the net. Shown here, essentially the idea of defining where the players should ideally all be positioned in relation to one another, which allows them to become a really good counter-pressing team. If your net is too spread, you may feel like you're covering more of the pitch, but if you lose the ball, let's say in the middle, you're miles away. However, if you're too compressed, you may feel like you're more ready to jump on teams if you do lose it, but you restrict your passing game as you can't be too expansive. Getting those distances right is one of the hardest things in football and requires hours of coaching and concentration. I don't know whether Mikel uses the net methodology or idea specifically. He hasn't told me, but there are many reasons we're so good at counter-pressing, and I believe it's partly down to how well prepared we are positionally in case we do turn over the ball. I challenge you to take basically any screenshot from settled play of that Newcastle game when Arsenal are in possession and tell me that Arsenal's players aren't almost always in the perfect position to either receive the ball and play, or if the ball was turned over, be ready to pounce and win it back straight away. They're never too far away and never too wide. They're never stood on top of one another, but they're never trying to cover the whole pitch. This data viz from Mark R Stats from about a month ago shows how good we are on the counter press, second only to PSG for success rate, so the best in the Premier League, and there's a reason. The amount of hours that must have gone into relational play and drills to achieve this consistency is staggering, as well as signing and developing the players with the intelligence to do this in the first place. The players aren't just standing in random positions based on intuition, they're looking at each other and working out where they should be in relation to one another. I'm a YouTuber, don't listen to me, listen to the professional coaches. This is drilled. But it's not just that, it's the aggressiveness and willingness to win the ball back right from the first whistle, despite most of these players having just started their 4th game in 13 days against Newcastle. I know we joke about it, but look at that field tilt. You don't achieve that level of suffocation without a huge amount of physical effort. The amount of unselfish work that goes on, crucially for the entire game without the concentration dropping, is a testament to how much the team believe in the football they play and how much they need to suffocate others in order to succeed. Then, of course, it's the individual talent. Just to highlight 2, Gabriel, man. How many times is he stepping forward early to win that ball back for us, getting it right so much more consistently than before? Remember that Man City red card or the Southampton red card? He's completely cut that out of his game. And Declan Rice. I mentioned those 2, but it's all of them. Just look at the reaction to the Newcastle goal. Of course you want your team to want the clean sheet, but to a man you see frustration at conceding, despite it clearly being a consolation, playing out to the sound of ironic cheers from the Newcastle fans. This is a team that are committed to a whole game methodology. It's not we're attacking, then we're defending. It's we're defending while we're attacking, and we're attacking while we're defending. Secondly, one of my key messages about this team at the moment is encouraging fans to look back at what we used to complain about. It might sound weird on the surface, but for me, this gives us courage to project forward, to think about what might be fixed or certainly addressed in the future, because so much that we used to complain about has already been addressed. We used to complain about Arteta's subs, but now Arsenal have great numbers and a good record for substitute goal involvement. We used to complain about the use of the squad, much better this season when you look at the minutes. We've rightly complained in the past about injuries always derailing our season, and it's happened again. Look at our list of injuries. But are we derailed? No, and that's down to the summer recruitment addressing that concern. We've fixed so many of our problems and become more adaptable, relying less and less on individuals and so on, but the past complaint that I want to linger on is this. Remember when we used to complain about how robotic the football seemed? Even this season, I've said the players don't seem to have any ideas in the final third, they're overcoached, and so on. It's felt, at times, like we're trying to do the same thing over and over again. You all know it when you see it. Ball out to Saka, White makes the run, connect with Odegaard, Saka crashes the box, repeat. On the other side, attract pressure to the left, ball out to Zinchenko, into the midfield, back out to Martinelli to run at an isolated player, and so on. Repeated actions. When they don't work, we complain. But these attacking patterns are fundamental to the reason we're looking so good at the moment, because they're working. Two examples I want to use for this. The first is the missed Martinelli chance. Odegaard doesn't even look back and plays a beautiful back heel because he knows exactly where Saka will be after he connects with him in the half space. Then Saka doesn't even look up either because he knows someone will be attacking the 6-yard box. Martinelli then nearly scores after making that darting run to the centre of the 6-yard box, knowing Saka will pull it back. And the second is the goal. It was so simple. Martinelli gets that ball over the top, and once he takes it down, Havertz is on his bike. He knows exactly where that ball's headed. Martinelli doesn't even look up, plays it back to the centre of the 6-yard box, the place where he often runs himself, and Havertz has a simple tap-in. 2-0, game pretty much over. It is frustrating when it doesn't work, and I absolutely retain the right to complain about it when it doesn't. But these patterns that we can see being repeated again and again and again are one of the reasons we're so good. Relying on these patterns got us into a position as the form team in Europe with the best goal difference in the league, and second only to Liverpool for goals scored. Sometimes they're annoying, but big picture, they're working. Finally, set pieces, and I'm going to focus on corners. Every corner is different, of course. Some go short, sometimes the delivery isn't quite right, and there's small adjustments game to game that depend on opposition, who's in our team, but there are some key principles. Firstly, Arsenal usually play in-swingers. Rice if it's from the left, off his right, and Saka from the right, off his left. I would say Arsenal almost always overload the back post at the setup, but then what happens next is the variety. And I'd say there's two main variations from what I've seen. Version 1, there's a trigger for the taker, and that's someone at the back post starting a run across to the front post when they feel the timing is right. This has two aims. One, to be there for a potential flick on or to attack the ball, depending on the delivery. And two, to drag the opposition players away from the back post, which is often what we're actually trying to exploit. It's a decoy run that we may also profit from. These are typically our biggest players making these runs to create the most amount of momentum and physical power to contend with. By the time the ball gets into the box, the front post is overloaded and there's space at the back. Once that movement happens, you'll see a sole player move towards that back post to try and profit from either the flick on or the ball coming directly to them. We try and change this up so it's not always obvious who the run is going to be. Sometimes Martinelli, sometimes it's Saka, Trossard, sometimes Rice if it's the other side, and so on. They also vary where that run comes from. Occasionally the front of the box, occasionally the side, so it's easier to track. And a good example of this working is Rice's winner against United at home. Version 2, though, is slightly different. Instead of us making the full run across the box, we still overload the back post, but actually just step into the 6-yard box rather than running through it and force the physical duels with Saliba, Kivior, Havertz, and so on. From there, it's much more about creating a bit of separation amidst the chaos. A good example of this working is Saliba's goal against West Ham, where Saliba simply rises highest. The delivery for these corners is often a bit higher to try and get over the goalkeeper and ask the opposition defenders to backtrack. I imagine version 1 is used where we think we might outsmart them, or where we're targeting their back post defenders in isolation because we think that might be where their weakness is. And version 2 might be where we think we can outmuscle them, or where we're concerned about the transition threat because we're more central and less bunched over to one side. I'm sure we use other variations, and I'm probably not even close on the level of detail, but from an observational perspective, these are the two I've seen personally most used in the Premier League. Porto, for example, was different again. Regardless, to hold all that information and develop an intuition of what corner might work, with Nico Jova supposedly drip-feeding instructions throughout the week, is very impressive. We must also be beginning to strike fear into our position whenever we get a corner. Also want to highlight the players on the edge of the box who often step in early to stop the transition, and Ben White. As funny as it is to see him SH1T house the goalkeeper on the line, he actually plays a very important role, often preventing the goalkeeper coming to claim with subtle movements and blocking that he almost always gets away with. He bullied Loris Karius, for example, at the weekend. He's a smart player. And none of that would mean anything without superb deliveries. As mentioned earlier, Declan Rice has shown me something I didn't even know he had, with a superb delivery that consistently mixes height, depth, and whip. Incredible technique. Arsenal, right now, I would argue, are one of, if not the, best coached team in the world. The individual and collective improvements, yes, but what about the dominance? It's in every phase of play. Literally pick any. I've picked 3 for the video, but I could have chosen out of 15, 20 possibilities. Because it's not, oh, we're playing well, but we look a bit vulnerable on set pieces. Or, yes, we're winning, but we are relying on an individual. We're dominating everything. Duels, set pieces, baiting the press, counter press, individual battles, 1v1s attacking and defending, second balls, accessing the box. Maybe it's better to ask, what aren't we good at? What phase of play aren't we dominating? I genuinely would love to know. We're even good at throw-ins. And this run has come at a time when we haven't had Jesus, Zinchenko, or Partey, arguably 3 starters, plus Vieira and Tomiyasu. I don't know what this team's ceiling is. I still don't think we'll win the league. I just think City are too good. But this is one of the best teams we've ever seen at Arsenal, period, in my view. And the results will come, even if it's not this season. Trust in Mikel and trust in the boys, because they're doing an incredible job.
If you like The Different Knock, you can support us on Patreon monthly, or you can buy us a coffee.